After the success of Scooby-Doo Where Are You?, Hanna-Barbera knew their next iteration of Scooby had to take the groundwork laid out and build upon it. So, 2 years after Where Are You's cancellation, the new Scooby-Doo movies premiered in 1972. These episodes doubled in length to 1-hour blocks on CBS, having special guests in each episode to join the gang for their meddling. And did it work out? Well... In the ghastly ghost town, the gang take a wrong turn and wind up in a desert ghost town, a theme park owned by the Three Stooges. The Stooges didn't really add much comedy-wise for me, at least not that could have been provided by 3 other random characters. But having the name attached is still pretty fun. When Velma disappears, the gang and the Stooges search around the ghost town for her, and each scene is rampant with classic Scooby-Doo comedy, especially this scene with the mirrors that reminds me of the Cyberchase movie. The last third of the episode really drags on when Scooby and Shaggy are left to their own devices to try and find a way back to the others. But other than that, the pacing is pretty classically Scooby-Doo. By the end, Crunch and Rhino are captured, and it's revealed that they were illegally mining, transporting, and selling uranium across the border. And hey gang, you might want to get tested for radiation poisoning. Overall, it's a fun episode, still adhering to the formula from Where Are You? And I'm excited to see what this newer format brings. Batman and Robin join us in the dynamic Scooby-Doo affair, as they and the gang track down the perps counterfeiting money. And I get that Batman's an A-list name, and he's like a professional vigilante, but he really stole the show, but in kind of a bad way. Also, Fred is glazing them the entire episode. He's such a dweeb in this one. When the gang go with Batman and Robin to find the Batmobile, they wind up at the Gotham City amusement park, where Penguin and Joker reside. And them controlling this funhouse is genuinely so much fun. The little goofs and scares they give the gang are pretty good. And then they put on the skeleton costumes, and immediately get caught? Kinda lame. But Joker and Penguin weren't the counterfeiters. They just received it. The real perps are back at the house, where they find the purple hooded figure, who turns out to be Miss Baker. This episode's a lot of fun, with 2 of the most iconic Batman villains, and a pretty good plot, and definitely better than the previous episode. The gang crash the mystery machine in the swamps outside the Addams Family Manor, and get taken inside by Lurch to be the new housekeepers. During dinner, the power goes out, and Wednesday goes missing. So the mystery gang have their next case. As they explore the house, some typical Addams Family hijinks ensues, and they really don't miss a chance for another gag. This episode feels like joke after joke. My favorite is definitely the skeletons in the closet. I love these guys. It's revealed that a giant vulture is terrorizing the Addams Family to try and get them to leave town, piloted by 2 housekeepers from the beginning. They had some sort of magic magnet technology, which allowed them to control the Addams Family household and kidnap Wednesday. Their plan doesn't quite go as they wished, but in the end, the Addams Family hosts the neighborhood kids for a playdate, and everyone has a pretty good time. This episode definitely lacked the substance, but seeing the Addams Family interact with the mystery gang like this was an absolute treat, so not too bad. The gang give Jonathan Winters a ride to Grandma Frickert's farm, when they're rudely interrupted by a scarecrow. Grandma Frickert is planning to open up a fried chicken shop, so they have to deal with a lot of snooping from potential recipe thieves. In classic Scooby fashion, they all split up, with Shaggy and Scooby going with Jonathan Winters and Vernon, where they follow the trespassers, while Daphne, Fred, and Velma go with Grandma Frickert, having to deal with the scarecrow. Also, this joke between Daphne and Velma got a good laugh out of me.
Where are the men? They're never around when you need them.
Now, perhaps this is my ignorance to older popular culture, but Jonathan Winters in this episode was genuinely not funny. Most of the comedy relied on funny little voices and noises, but at least I bet he had a fun time recording his lines. Eventually they find that the bank was under the mask, looking to steal Grandma Frickert's chicken recipe to open up his own place, and he's taken away. Definitely not my favorite episode in the series, and I imagine it'll end up towards the bottom, unfortunately. The gang get caught in a torrential rainstorm, leaving them no other option than to go to Moody Manor for safety. But they're trailed by this goofball, Don Knotts, through the woods. Once they enter, they find the place to have locked them in, as Don Knotts plays dress up as different characters in the house. When the storm prevents them from leaving, they have a nice little slumber party, but get scared by this ghost that's not really a ghost, leading to one of our classic door chase scenes. Eventually, Knotts can't keep his story or disguises straight, leading to his reveal. But he still believes that the gang is responsible for Captain Moody's disappearance, and they work together to find him. When they do, they also find 2 real ghosts, who chase them back into the house. As the gang and Dawn investigate more, they come across the captain tied up at the old mineshaft, and his two nephews are behind it all to get the inheritance. Again, I'm not too familiar with Don Knotts, but his gag of constantly changing costume and giving himself reassuring messages in the mirror got kind of tiresome, and he didn't really add too much to the story either. I mean, at least he doesn't come back for another episode. Overall, not a bad episode, but certainly a forgettable one. In A Good Medium is Rare, the gang find a lost poodle, and return it to this spooky looking manor, owned by Phyllis Diller. Someone breaks into her mansion while the power goes out, looking for her expensive jewelry collection. Eventually, she makes her way down to Madame Zokar's magic mansion, a renowned psychic medium who's definitely not a complete fraud. Miss Diller spills where to find her jewels, and everyone makes a run for her mansion to find them. But the gang and Miss Diller get trapped in the magic mansion, and have to find their way out. Even once they do, the perps waste a bit more of their time, sending the gang down the river on a raft. Now back at Miss Diller's, the blue-faced bandits chase the gang through the house, before pausing to try and crack the safe. The gang finds Phyllis tied up in an old grandfather clock, and the police show up just in time to bust Alberto and the other guy red-handed. I feel like this series so far has a lot of those, ooh, spooky mansion, look at this inanimate object, it's moving, ooh, cliches. And it's already starting to get kind of old. Also, Phyllis Diller just won't shut up about how beautiful she is. Definitely towards the bottom. The gang visit a movie studio, when they run into actress Sandy Duncan, who says she's being chased by some ghost. Sandy and her stunt woman Shirley are shooting a new movie, but this ghost is ruining their shoot, and Shirley leaves the set. Luckily, Daphne has the exact same hairstyle, so after a quick change, she looks the part. As the gang investigates, Shaggy and Scooby get trapped in this underground tunnel, winding up lost somewhere in the desert set, getting chased by two mummies. Meanwhile, Fred and Daphne explore the set some more, getting chased by all sorts of wacky props, including this dragon. Eventually, they meet back up, and it's time for them to shoot some of their scenes. A fake Mr. Hyde ends up kidnapping Daphne, assuming her to be Sandy Duncan, leading the gang and the real Sandy Duncan to track them down through basically every biome known to man, winding up in the mausoleum, where they eventually unmask Mr. Hyde as Zelia Fairchild, an old silent movie star. And after everything, they don't press charges? Even with the less than satisfactory ending, this one was a lot of fun throughout. Sandy Duncan manages to be one of the better guest stars, mostly because this doesn't feel like one big self-ego inflation, like some of the recent episodes have been. They use a lot of different sets, and I just really like the overall animation and painted backgrounds. A lot of nice variety that, for the time, and even still, is impressive. Right now, this is going at the top of the list. Let's see if they can build on this momentum into some more great episodes. In The Secret of Shark Island, the gang come across Sunny and Cher in the midst of some car troubles, and considering it's pouring rain, give them a ride to the hotel. When they arrive, they find that the hotel isn't exactly as advertised, but the hotel service is at least a nice old man, who gives them a room for the night. As the storm rages on, the girls see Pescado Diabolico, which keeps them up for the rest of the night. Once day breaks, they find the high tide keeping them trapped on the island. So what else to do other than explore the island, as Fred finds some old rum bottles, while Shaggy and Scooby have their own little run-in with Pescado Diabolico, who chases them back to shore. Eventually, everyone meets back up in the island's cave, where they find a refinery smelting down gold being brought in via crane. As Shaggy, Scooby, Sunny, and Cher are chased by the shark, Daphne, Fred, and Velma have to dodge the crane operator trying to scoop them up. Just before they're incinerated, Fred sneaks up behind Milo, the hotel manager, who's operating the crane, and he's busted by Matilda, Matt Hidalgo, an undercover investigator. Milo meekly and the two scuba divers found a shipwreck containing gold doubloons, and were smelting them down to export them without having to pay taxes on them. This one's another pretty good episode. Cher's funny as always, and Sunny is kinda just here, so that's nice. Their back and forths are fine, sometimes overstaying their screen time, but not so much as to detract from the episode, whose pacing is pretty good all things considered. Overall, another top half episode to this point. The gang are traveling through the desert when they're pulled over by a local cop, who turns out to be... Aw man, this guy again? It's Don Knotts again. He gives them an escort back to Juneberry, a town just on the precipice of becoming a ghost town. While they sleep in the jail, a looming figure enters, delivering a note via horseshoe that they should get lost. While they initially believe it to be the sheriff, once the fog rolls in, Fred and Velma go outside to investigate, barely evading this lasso. They trace some tracks back to the cemetery, when they eventually encounter a Phoebe Bridgers cosplayer, trailing them back to a cave system full of creepy creatures, which just turn out to be projections. Eventually, they find the skeleton at their headquarters, nearly catching them before Don Knotts ruins everything again. This gives the skeleton enough time to turn the water on them, flooding the caves and nearly killing them. Luckily, Scooby's a very brave boy, helping everyone get out of the cave, where they then catch the skeleton gang transporting stolen cattle, led by Gene Haltree. I think I've grown a genuine hatred for Don Knotts. He's so annoying in these episodes. I mean, surely he won't come back for a third episode. Going towards the bottom of the ranking. The gang's going for a ski trip in the Ghost of Bigfoot, when they come across Laurel and Hardy, just after a monster tried to crash them with a boulder. With the storm coming in, they're forced to stay at the lodge, where Bigfoot wreaks all kinds of havoc. But that doesn't stop them from enjoying the skiing. But when Mr. Crabtree disappears, everyone splits up to search for him, only to find Bigfoot once more, who leaves behind their list of stolen cars. Following the lead to the old junkyard, and later the sawmill, they find the stolen car factory, and more importantly, Bigfoot. Of course, it's not actually Bigfoot, this time, but really Mr. Crabtree, who's been stealing, painting, and selling cars. This one's another fun episode. I always love the ones where the gang goes to the snow. Also, this one reminds me a lot of the Where Are You episode with the Abominable Snowman, which is always fun. I think this one's solidly in the top half of the series. In the Ghost of the Red Baron, the gang get run off the road by this red biplane, taking a detour through the cornfield, eventually ending up with... the Three Stooges again. As they patch up the mystery machine, they encounter this creepy looking guy, with a truly unfortunate haircut, right before the plane's turned on, nearly killing the gang. As everyone sleeps in the hangar, they're rudely awakened by Red Baron, who sends in his mini-plane before taking matters into his own hands, Superman flying through the place. While Velma is hiding in a plane, the Red Baron turns on the ignition, sending her flying. Fred tries to guide her, while the Stooges fly alongside her, before eventually everyone comes to a crash landing, but still safe enough. When they go to investigate the old barn, they get trapped inside, leaving Shaggy and Scooby to rescue the day, just in time to stop Red Baron, revealed to be Siegfried, from killing all the corn. There's a lot of good gags in this episode. Shaggy and Scooby running through the cornfield making a sign for help is one of my all-time favorites. And the Stooges aren't entirely annoying, as helpless as they are. Definitely one of the better ones of this season. Okay, stop me if you've heard this one before. But the gang are driving along when they break down in the swamp. Luckily for them, the Harlem Globetrotters just happen to be following them, but they soon meet the same fate. They arrive at an old inn, where a creepy voice tells them to buzz off. Eventually, they break down the door, and the wall behind, but at least they're out of the elements, and right into the greatest animated pickup game ever. Except they kinda fundamentally miss the point. If they're tipping off like this, then the gang should shoot this way, but yell at Scooby for doing so. He inevitably blows the layup, and the ball goes inside the other peach basket, which they call points for them. Does this matter? No. Did I feel the need to complain about this? Yeah, absolutely. Not even the refs called them on it, more concerned about scaring the gang and the team off, leaving with a shadow bomb just before dawn. Shaggy and Scooby accidentally land in their getaway boat, leaving the rest of the gang and the Globetrotters to follow their Scooby Snack breadcrumb trail right to their pirate headquarters. Swampy Pete brought a police helicopter squad right to the pirates, and they're arrested for their illegal oil operation. But Swampy Pete isn't really swampy, but an undercover agent, and he calls a police escort to get the Globetrotters to Miami just in time for their game. The last 5 minutes is essentially a Globetrotter mixtape, with even more outlandish stunts, since we're in Cartoon World, and it rocks. Maybe there's some bias here, but the Globetrotters might have been the best special guests thus far. They had some good gags, and actually helped drive the plot along. I think this episode will definitely end up near the top. The gang run out of fuel in the middle of nowhere. Again. Leading them to visiting Hagglethorn Castle, home of the Haunted Horseman, and Davy Jones. No, not that one. This one. They decide to stick around for a bit, and try and solve a mystery for him and his uncle. Everyone splits up, with Fred joining Shag and Scoob for once, which of course lands him face to face with the Horseman, who chases them through the halls. Meanwhile, Davy and the girls get locked in the other room, only to find the projector used for the image. But the real Horseman is no ghost, as the boys find remnants of the horse's shoe on the ground. Just as they're about to enter a hidden door, Fred, Shaggy, and Scooby get sent down a trapdoor, joining up with Davy and the girls, thwarting the moat monster, and chasing them back to the farm, eventually catching the Duke of Strathmore in the Horseman's costume, and Farmer Wheatley in the wetsuit they saw exit the moat monster one. Davy Jones didn't really add much to this episode, aside from one extremely Beatles derivative song and a chase scene, probably winding up somewhere towards the middle. The gang go down to the country music hall to meet Jerry Reed as he's rehearsing his performance. Except the doors are locked, so they legitimately break into the place and get caught in the process. Once they rightfully get thrown out, they come back later and break in again, really tempting me to do the legal analysis for the gang. Eventually, Daphne, Fred, and Velma find Jerry Reed locked down in the basement, but once the lights go out, find his guitar stolen, leading to the next stage of the investigation. And honestly, this episode stalls out so heavily. There's no real chase here until the very end. No real mystery to care about, and the doubled runtime really shows. Everything happens in like the last 5 minutes, where Ben, Bing, and Bertha are revealed to have been trying to keep everyone away from the theater, where the money they stole from the bank was kept. In a way, it's a nice inversion of typical Scooby episode formula of mystery, chase, clues, chase, capture. But just as an episode, it's incredibly dull, and I wouldn't really blame you for doom scrolling on your phone throughout this one. It's going towards the bottom for sure. The gang are out camping, when they have another run-in with Batman and Robin, who are still on the hunt for Joker and Penguin. When they encounter the Dryad, they try and take it out with the log, sending Scooby off the cliff with it. Of course, Dryads are just myths, when in reality, Joker is under the suit, with Penguin as the troll. Also, Fred says Jeepers a lot in this episode, which is typically Daphne's thing, so Daphne constantly says Creepers instead. It's not a big deal, but after binging so much Scooby-Doo content in such a short time, I thought I was losing my mind. As Joker and Penguin escape in the Batcopter, the gang somehow drives fast enough to beat them to the rubber factory, which leads to some fun weapons for the gang to use against them. The worried engineer throws the flying suit out the window, landing perfectly on Scooby, which inflates and sends him flying. But whatever you do not look up Scooby-Doo inflation. Eventually, Penguin tries to pop the suit with his umbrella, instead hitting the inflatable parade float Batman, which leads to their downfall. It's another fun episode, but more in spite of Batman and Robin than because of them. They just don't really do much to help. Somehow they arrive last to the factory. There's a bit where they try and catch Scooby and fail every time. And really, they're just kind of incompetent. But even still, this is another good episode, and a very good palate cleanser after the snooze fest last time out. In the season 1 finale, the Harlem Globetrotters are back, joining the gang in their expedition throughout New England to find Shaggy's uncle, with revolutionary ghosts and all. As Shaggy and Scooby look through the house, they find an old photo album, and oh my god, look at little Scooby, he's adorable! That night, a ghost version of Paul Revere warns them that the British are coming, and then he and the rest of the ghosts infiltrate the uncle's house, scaring everyone until the morning. But the gang and the Globetrotters make it down to the water, where they get to water ski and scuba dive, eventually coming across a giant sea creature. Scooby hitches a ride on it, eventually pulling the plug, deflating it and catching 2 of the ghosts. And with one extremely fundamental chest pass, the Globetrotters nab the final one, revealed to be Morgan. They were trying to scare everyone away so that the treasure they found would be all theirs. But Shaggy's uncle tells them it's all fake, from a movie back in the day. For a season finale, it's a good enough episode. Not quite as good as the first Globetrotters episode, but again, one of the better ones. Straight into season 2, and straight back with the Harlem Globetrotters, making their 3rd and final appearance as guests. Also, I have no idea what went wrong animating Scooby here, but he looks terrible. He looks like the Schoolhouse Rock team drew him. Also, if you thought Fred would have learned how to watch the fuel gauge by now, you're dead wrong. As they get stranded by this old shack, where the Globetrotters are. They board a ship they believe to be heading to Picnic Island, but instead, its destination is Haunted Island. Once they hit land, they make their way to an old mansion, which, to no one's surprise, is haunted. Okay, not really. The island is really being run by these guys in white hoods, who are out to ruin the Globetrotters' lives, and oh, this ain't a good look. These guys are the owner, coach, and trainer of the team the Globetrotters are supposed to face in the morning, and they wanted to sabotage them so they had a better chance against them. Which kinda works for them, as the Globetrotters were down 42-0 at halftime, before making a miraculous comeback to win at the end. Unfortunately, this one's going near the bottom, as it's wrought with weird animation glitches and a pretty uninteresting plot, only somewhat redeemed by the Globetrotter antics at the end. When Shaggy gets everyone lost, they wind up walking onto a riverboat, where they run into Josie and the Pussycats, who are a little rude, honestly.
Hey, why don't you watch out where we're going?
While they stay on the ship, they all encounter the ghosts inhabiting it. Captain Scavenger and, Joe. Even with the ghosts, the gangs give the boat a revamp, just in time for Lance Goodwin to buy the mortgage from the bank. When the ghosts rev up the scares, the gangs hatch a plan to outsmart them, but get caught up in a net with a couple $1 million. Luckily, Shaggy and Scooby didn't get captured, and are able to help free everyone. This whole episode has a lot of references to Mark Twain's Tom Sawyer, and their escape on the Mississippi is the pinnacle of them all. And eventually the ghosts are found to be Captain Canopy, also known as Jack Canna. With them caught, Josie and the Pussycats can perform their benefit show, but we never get a song from them, which is really disappointing. This episode was pretty fun. I love the Tom Sawyer references, even if some didn't quite hold up. Josie and her gang were fine additions, but I hated Alexandra. She was just super bitter the whole time, but Melody's bubbly, kinda ditzy personality more than made up for it. I think it's gonna end up somewhere towards the middle overall. We start this episode with Fred saying at least they have a full tank of fuel, so it's almost like they know my issues with that being the catalyst for the story 90% of the time. Of course, the other 10% is wrecking the mystery machine, and wouldn't you know, luckily, Jeannie is there to save the day, and the gang join her and her friends on their case to Persia, which we know today is Iran. When they arrive at the palace, the jet lag is really hitting them, so they decide to just call it a night, which Daphne says is
Super!
I got this girl and she wants me to duke up.
Shaggy, Scooby, and Babu are startled in the middle of the night by someone wearing a keffiyeh, barely being saved by Jeannie. But during the night, they're all sent down a chute, landing in this hallway of doorways, and once again Jeannie saves the day. They're all taken to meet Prince Aben. Well, maybe not Prince for long, as the spirits drive away any potential princesses. In the kitchen, they're all accosted by an evil djinn, who kidnaps Jeannie. This time, Scooby saves the day, breaking her out of her glass. And Jeannie defeats the djinn in a magical duel, revealing the djinn's master to be Aben's uncle, who wanted to steal the Sultanate from Aben. I really like this one. We get another new country to add to the map of Scooby, and for being the 70s, it's handled pretty well, which is a lot better than shows then were. The scenery is fun, the villains and lore were accurate enough, and it's one of the best episodes in the series. The gang travel back to Velma's hometown for a fundraiser for her alma mater, where they find the stadium to be haunted by the ghost of Fireball McFan. They meet the coach, actor Tim Conway, who's the only thing keeping the school running. If they can't raise enough money, it'll be closed and sold off. While investigating, Shaggy, Scooby, and Tim get chased by the ghost, as Daphne, Fred, and Velma fall victim to a trapdoor, exploring underneath the school. As the other three join, they find a diorama for a racetrack that looks kinda like the school, and some convenient construction equipment that helps them escape. During the final chase, it's revealed that we have a duo of culprits, as Jesse Finster and the principal's twin brother were looking to get the school closed to buy it for cheap. The chase itself is pretty long, with a lot of gags that draw it out. Also, the special guest is non-stop slapstick comedy, to varying success, but not the worst one. Overall, it's probably towards the bottom though. Scooby and the gang hit Hollywood, and this time they don't have any car trouble. But Don Adams does. They take him to his next exterminator job, at this disheveled old mansion, with a creepy butler included, as they spread out to get rid of the termite infestation. The gas tanks get stolen by various creepies around the house, and everyone gets scared by the ghosts. Or not ghosts. It's very contentious throughout the gang, who continue to argue over it, but when a rogue hand votes, they take off running. When they find the tanks in the basement, they've all been emptied, and as Don Adams is about to fight, he gets locked in the chest and carried off. When Scooby falls down the laundry chute, he interrupts the butler and Lorne Chumley shooting some of the final scenes of his final movie, before the bank sells his house. The gang agree to help him with his final scene, and he can finally be at peace. At this point, I feel like a broken record. But this is another okay episode. Nothing groundbreaking, nothing too outlandish or goofy. I do like that they all helped Lorne at the end finish his movie. That was very sweet. In the weird winds of Winona, the gang are on their way to Oceanside, where they'll get to see Speed Buggy. But once night falls, they decide to camp out on the side of the road. And yeah, this is 100% the worst night of sleep the boys could get. But oh my goodness, look at Scooby on the pillow. The next morning, they encounter Speed Buggy and his friends a bit earlier than expected, and caravan to Oceanside, when Fred rear-ends this old guy's truck. This poor old man constantly blames himself for the wreck, but Fred had ample time to stop. Honestly, I just think he's terrible at driving. But the two parties get to stay on the farm until Tinker fixes the mystery machine. That night, they encounter a shadowy figure, which attacks them with various objects. The next day, Shag and Scoob join the girls exploring the town of Winona, when they get separated and locked in the library. Once reunited, they decide to check out the next lead, the cave system in the mountain, where the hooded figure resides. Actually, make that 2 hooded figures, who are responsible for the harsh winds. Wait. Make that a 4 of a kind of hooded figures. One by one, they all get caught. Hey, hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many are there? Anyways, the bank president PJ Peabody was trying to drive everyone out to purchase the land for cheaper. Pretty standard stuff. This one stands out because of the hooded guys that multiply like bacteria. And Speed Buggy is kind of fun too, but they did kind of forget about the whole race thing that they were supposed to go to. In the penultimate episode, the gang drive past the Sugar Plum Candy Factory, where Cass Elliot is being held captive. When they use the key she gave them, they get locked in too, where these green mucus monsters are up to no good. Once they find Cass Elliot, they have to rely on Shaggy and Scooby to get them out. But their licorice escape rope breaks under Cass, which is probably where I'll mention that a lot of the jokes come at her expense, and focus solely on her weight. I'm sure she was fine with it, but it just seems in bad taste now. Actually, not just bad taste, just flat out mean. Eventually, they see the green globs making candy bars, all being sent to Brazil. With the group split, Shaggy, Scooby, and Cass get chased by the green globs, eventually defeating them with these chocolate bunnies. But not for long, as they get locked in another room in the factory, this one being flooded with popcorn, so the green globs can continue their work. When the door finally breaks down, Shaggy gets covered in cotton candy, which just happens to look like the other green globs. The gang gets caught in some extra sticky taffy, leaving enough time for the globs to load up some more of their contraband candy. Unluckily for them, the Snow Queen of Texas ensures that they won't be leaving on a jet plane anytime soon, turning them into a Sunday for Monday. All of the pretty incontestably fatphobic jokes about Miss Cass aside, I really enjoyed this episode. Almost as much as I enjoy the mamas and the papas, and it's definitely winding up towards the top. And finally, we've reached our last episode, the Haunted Carnival. And, wouldn't you know, the gang go to a haunted carnival, run by Dick Van Dyke, who's running this thing single-handedly, after everyone deserts him due to the haunting. Speaking of, here's the ghost now. Let's give them a hand. Oh. Shaggy and Scooby work together to try and hide from the ghost, who naturally finds them almost instantly. Meanwhile, Dick Van Dyke does some magic tricks for Daphne, Fred, and Velma, taking a brief pause from it to save Shaggy and Scooby from dying, after being sent into orbit via balloons. After another encounter with the strongman ghost, Shaggy, Scooby, and Dick Van Dyke hide behind the fortune teller, who sends them down a chute into the Tunnel of Love, where they eventually join back up with the others. Down in the motor room, they find the strongman working out, who admits he was trying to get Dick Van Dyke to sell in the park for cheap, and after a quick fight, is captured by the ice cream cart. I wasn't expecting some grand finale really, but even so, this was a bit disappointing. But I know that most times, a final episode in an animated series was never meant to be the final episode, so I'll give it some leniency. And now, all 24 episodes of the new Scooby-Doo movies ranked from worst to best. The Phantom of the Country Music Hall, The Spooky Fog of Juneberry, A Good Medium is Rare, The Haunted Horseman of Hagglethorne Hall, Who's Not Coming to Dinner, The Spirit Spooked Sports Show, The Mystery of Haunted Island, Ghastly Ghost Town, The Frickert Fracas, The Haunted Carnival, The Exterminator, The Haunted Showboat, The Ghost of Bigfoot, The Weird Winds of Winona, The Loch Ness Mess, The Ghost of the Red Baron, The Dynamic Scooby-Doo Affair, The Haunted Candy Factory, Wednesday is Missing, The Secret of Shark Island, The Caped Crusader Caper, Mystery in Persia, The Ghostly Creep from the Deep, and Sandy Duncan's Jekyll and Hyde. I'd love to know your top 3, or even your full ranking down below. As always, I'm always down to discuss more Scooby with you in the comments. Overall, the new Scooby-Doo movies is a fun series, but these 40-minute episodes can really make or break an episode. Sometimes, the added runtime is to its benefit, giving scenes more time to breathe and let the plot further more naturally than the other ones. But sometimes it's an excruciatingly long episode, with gags thrown in for no reason other than to pad the runtime. I kinda like the gimmick of having celebrity guests for each episode, even though some fail to do anything of note for the episode, or worse, are the most annoying thing on earth when they're on screen. But if you're a big time Scooby fan and haven't seen the series, I would definitely recommend it, especially if you're looking for that classic Scooby-Doo feel, as this does feel very close to the original, just not quite to the same heights. I just want to thank you for watching this series analysis and ranking video. I'd love to know what you think of this version of Scooby-Doo down below, and I'll see you very soon for the next edition, The Scooby-Doo Show. And of course, a big shout out to all the patrons. They'll be on screen right now. If you want to see the next video early, I've got them up over there right now. But don't skip a meal just to help me out though. You watching the vids is more than I could ask for. And I appreciate you all for doing so. And as always, thank you for watching.